Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Philip McMillan, and today we're doing a special session with regards to the loss or the life that has been lost with Dr. Jackie Stone. She was based in Zimbabwe and had been a stalwart at fighting for patients and saving lives during COVID-19. She had been through a lot with regards to censorship and targeting. And what we'll do is that we've got two people with us, Dr. Kat Lindley from the USA and Dr. Christian Buckland from the UK, to discuss both her life and the impact that this can have on many people. We can't afford to have a world where doctors advocating for patients lose everything and therefore in the process are broken because of it. Let us find a better way to protect not just patients, but doctors from the challenges that can happen. I'm going to play a short clip here, and I'd like you to remember her during this period of time.
In terms of what happened in Zimbabwe, the person who reported me worked for the Wellcome Trust and was a British doctor or a professor here, employed by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. There were a lot of letters written at the time saying that it was people outside of Zimbabwe that were targeting me. And in fact, our government protected me in terms of not ending up in jail. So I would say that wherever this is being driven from is above governments. It's people who fund governments. And I think that the doctors, many of them were actually completely captured. I think that doctors thought that they were doing the right thing. The doctor-patient relationship was used to get the public to trust that these things were safe and that they worked. So, and it was a massive machine. I think the people that I'm most concerned about are the media. Nothing gets out. Even this summit was highly censored. So I think that certain names are highly censored. I think that certain words are picked up by AI and censored. And I think the vast majority of the public have no access to this information at all.
Is there anything, and just have a moment to think and scroll around your head, is there anything you want to say that I haven't asked you that you think is important to say on the record that we can have for all time?
Not really, actually, I don't think. Like I said, I'm in an odd place at the moment. When Martin and I spoke about this, it was before he lost his court case in Namibia, and they said he didn't have locus standi. And that's what they've done, really. They've erased us. And it's been so easy. And that, for me, is the most frightening thing. And the recent amendments to the Medical Act say that the medical registrar can erase a doctor from the register. So you can put in decades of training and have decades of knowledge and experience. And if you say or do the wrong thing, you're gone.
I mean, I don't know if you want to speak into maybe a solution being another way of finding our own regulatory bodies, or, the sort of bit of the brainstorm stuff from yesterday. if, like what Shankar says, we need to just leave them
Alternative.
behind and find a new way. Do we want to talk about that, or do we not want to? Because that might.
The only reason I can't put my heart and soul into it because I don't think it'll work.
This stuff, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What we're up against is too powerful, and I'm such a solution-based person. I'll sit and think about solutions until I go purple. And I've been left at the end of this summit, to be honest, with the feeling of it's been wonderful to connect with people that I only connected with on Zoom before, but it's also the reality that we're living in some very difficult to explain times, and I don't know what to do about it. I actually don't. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know where I'll be in 5 years' time. I was thinking that last night. I really don't know what is going to happen. I think a lot of doctors are going to be replaced by AI because they follow algorithms. I think a lot of patients have lost trust in the medical profession and are looking for alternatives. But it just seems to be a lot of chaos out there. We worked out that if you used silver, ivermectin, doxycycline, and zinc, you would probably get a response. And the day we added ivermectin to our patients was the day that people really stopped dying.
So, we again commemorate her loss, and I'll bring in now here our guests, Kat and Christian. Do you mind doing a quick introduction? Kat, I'll ask you first, and then Christian, and then Kat, I'll ask you to tell us a bit more about Jackie. So go ahead, Kat.
Thank you for having me, Philip. I'm a family physician here in Texas. I'm president of Global Health Project and also the director of the FLCCC International Fellows Program. And I've been kind of in this space for a while now, and that's how I met Jackie. So I'll share my story after Christian introduces himself.
Excellent. And Christian?
Yeah, thanks again for having me on, Philip. I'm Christian Buckland. I'm a psychotherapist based in England. I didn't know Jackie. I've spoken at a conference with Jackie, but I know that Kat knew her well. So I feel really privileged to be here talking about this today because it's such an important topic about what's happened.
Excellent. So, Kat, I think because Jackie is one of those that I wished I had interviewed. I've done Shankar. I've done quite a lot of interviews to people across the world. I wish I had gotten her as one of them. So both of us need you to tell us and the audience a little bit more about who she was.
So I had a privilege of getting to know Jackie when I became part of the World Council for Health. I was with the council for about a year, and I worked closely with Jackie on the science committee. She was bigger than life. Obviously, we exchanged our phone numbers right away, and because of our time zones, lots of times we would leave each other messages when the other one is sleeping. And she was a force to be reckoned with, definitely recognized as one of the leaders, very close with Shankara Chetty, Ian Bright-Hope, people in Australia. I always remember her telling the story how she used to be one of the Bush doctors, and she also worked in aviation industry as a physician, obviously tropical medicine. She has been in Africa for a long time, so really well versed in infectious disease angle. So, COVID coming into Africa specifically, they did so well because of certain things that they already do. And then adding ivermectin and other things was really natural to them. So she was the one that was with Sabine Hayes, and she worked very closely with Sabine, and one to look up for protocols or if you had questions. And recently I became part of the FLCCC, the Frontline Critical Care Alliance, and had this vision. So because I'm from Europe, I'm from Croatia, when the whole thing started, I felt it's very important to be connected globally, and that's how I went with World Council for Health initially. But then even now, as we are transitioning into this new era with different things that are happening, I felt it's still very important for us to be connected globally. So when I spoke with the FLCCC about creating this fellow program, one of the first people I thought of was Jackie. And when I asked her to join us, she was, sign me up right away. I didn't even have to explain to her what I'm asking, because she was one of those doctors who understood how important it is to be connected to each other and be a kind of a source of strength for each other. And I think for most of us that have known her well, she was that.
Wow, wow. Really appreciate that, Kat. Really appreciate those words. And Christian, just to ask, because suicide in doctors is a big issue anyway. Can you give us some more insight into that?
Yeah, so it's always been known that even before COVID, there was such a higher rate of suicide within the medical profession, and more so, I believe, with females as well than males. So in the general population, we've always got a suicide risk, but we know that there are certain professions where it's higher, and medicine is certainly one of them. So, suicide is very, very difficult, and it touches everyone differently, and it's so hard to spot sometimes it is so difficult. You can look back at that video and you can start to pull bits out that you think, was that a warning sign or whatever, but it is so hard to really kind of see when someone is, unless they're specifically saying how they feel. And a lot of the time when people make a decision, it's very, very hard to know, and they don't always talk about how they feel. So this is why I think it's so sad and so important that we actually do talk about what's happened here.
I think one of the things that I genuinely struggle to understand, and I remember because she mentioned the word ivermectin in her presentation, and we know the work that has been done with Dr. Pierre Corey, and what has been done with through FLCCC and ivermectin. And I remember reflecting in my mind that, because I didn't fully understand the science, I had to go back to try and research it. But it's such a safe drug, why would anybody have an issue with somebody using it, so to speak? I just genuinely couldn't understand what all of the fuss was about. To me, it was, kind of like, fussing about something that we use all the time. We know it's safe, but if it didn't work, you wouldn't have to worry. The patients wouldn't use it. That was the simple point. You didn't have to worry about anything else. But very clearly, even after I spoke with Dr. McCullough, the problem was that the powers that be did not want anything that would impact on increasing vaccine hesitancy, because there were therapeutic options. Any thoughts about that, Kat? Because you guys at FLCCC would know firsthand about this kind of pressure and censorship, because it directly came on Dr. Marek and Dr. Corey. Any thoughts about that?
Well, from the United States standpoint, because we have the EUA, which is Emergency Use Authorization of Vaccines, if you have treatment that works, you cannot have EUA. And that's why there was a war on early treatment. Initially, we used hydroxychloroquine and other medications, but then as the circulating strains changed, there was a period when ivermectin worked better, and that's when we added ivermectin to our protocols. And even now, like there are times when ivermectin, actually right now, COVID is very easily tolerated by most people, and in most instances doesn't even have to be treated. But at the time, as strains changed, we would adjust our treatment. The point is, it wasn't necessarily ivermectin. I think ivermectin was an easy target because of the fact they could, use propaganda and call it horse medicine and all that. The war was against the early treatment because early treatment negated the need for the emergency use authorization.
One of the things that seemed to come out of this, and you were right, Christian, when you pointed out, she seemed as though she had lost the fight at the end when she said she's normally a solutions-based person, but she just can't see a way to win against this powerful industry that no matter which way you take it can't seem to be stopped. How do you help people when they have that thought in their mind? What do they do?
I think in my job, my biggest enemy is hopelessness. And when you start to see someone speaking in those kind of ways, that's when kind of the red flags often come up. But usually that's from asking people questions. So the red flags there are easily missed. But you're right that when she was talking about the it feels too big an enemy, things are going to change in the future. AI, she fears that AI is going to replace doctors. The patient doctor relationship has broken down, which I think is a really fundamental part here. I think it's so important with what's happened through censorship and things like that. You can really see there was a sense of where do we go from here? And as I say, that hopeless feeling is a really difficult one to overcome, because sometimes in my job, that's what I have to do, is give someone inspiration that things will get better, that there is change is round the corner. Even if I'm not sure, we've got to give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's give it a shot. It's very, very difficult when someone feels very resolved that things won't get better. And I think that, and Jackie said something really interesting to me at one point in that, said, I'm in an odd place or something like that. And it's those are little kind of key words when someone says that to me in a session, maybe I'll be thinking, what does odd mean? It's very easy to miss that just in a conversation. But I wonder, I found myself when I was listening to that video, watching that video, that there was so much about the future. There was, where will I be in 5 years' time? Where will I be in 5 weeks' time, 5 months' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? I think what we can sometimes feel when we're fighting a very, very difficult battle is tired, and we can feel like I feel quite a struggle to carry on. And I think the censorship, the relentless treatment, the persecution, I think, of a lot of doctors, especially Jackie, it can really wear you down very, very much. And that persecution really went after the doctor-patient relationship, because if you look at what Jackie and a lot of other doctors have really been speaking up for, it's been medical ethics. And it takes so much courage to stand up and actually talk about things that are really important, because you do put yourself in the firing line to be targeted. And the patient-doctor relationship is so vital to medical ethics. And it's taken a lot of these doctors who stood up, it's cost them so much. And here it's cost someone their life. I find that just so difficult. But going back to your question, how do we tackle hopelessness? That is the job. That is my job. That is the one thing that I think is important. And it is very, very difficult. And this is what I sometimes find when we're looking at doctors and why the suicide rate is higher there. They'll often have more knowledge about these things when they're talking about medicine, if there's illness, if there's looking to the future. So they will often feel that there are no solutions. And as Jackie said, she's a solutions-focused person. And so that is what's really difficult when then she felt that she was out of solutions. I think it's very, very hard.
I think one of the things that comes out is the fact that it would have been even more difficult for her because she saw how much of a difference her interventions made to saving lives. It's one thing to be at a distance and to, if somebody's working and they don't know what's going on and they don't have any control of it, it's easier for them to go along. But if you have reached a point where you have seen that an intervention or something can really help patients, being silent about it is almost even worse than trying to stand up. So, Kat, when you see this here, because I know that FLCCC have been facing similar kinds of pressures, and so you must know firsthand, how do you feel? How do you cope with those kinds of pressures?
Before we go into that, I do want to address something. So, Jackie and I have spoken very regularly, and we spoke in preparation for her summit at Victoria Falls. They had it like later in July. We had many phone calls about the whole conference. She was very excited about it. And after that, we texted a few times. She called me, we talked about our kids and stuff like that. And then, I found out a few days ago that she took her own life. And then someone shared that video with me. First time I cried, but that was actually the first time I saw Jackie. It's kind of like paradox. I saw her defeated to a certain extent, for sure, but also almost like, I don't want to say that she was at peace, because obviously that was you could see that she was troubled, but almost as like she had this aha moment, and whether it's a good or bad, she kind of understood it. And it breaks my heart because when she says I'm at such an odd place, and I can see where she says that, because I think she finally realized, well, I can't say what she realized, but what my interpretation of what she is, I think this Victoria Falls conference, and I haven't watched it for all, I'm definitely going to go back to it, but was kind of something she wanted to do for so long. She got to do it, and then she took a breath and almost like looked from this mountaintop, as I call it, and said, this is what happened these last 4 years. This is where we are. And we still have this huge mountain to climb. And I would say that we do, right? Because we're still all struggling with a certain extent of censorship and what's happening in the world, in the United States and around the world. It kind of breaks my heart to see her spirit so quiet, because she's not she was never a quiet person. I'm telling you, when I say she was bigger than life, she was. I still hear her laughter in my ears. It's really weird because I've been thinking about it for the last few days. I really hear it all the time. So, and I think what she said needs to be taken seriously. You guys have a different system than we have. I actually, during COVID, maybe because I came from communism and we were always used to kind of living our life and doing things, knowing that if you step out of line, you're going to be punished and all that. So I, took care of my patients. I wasn't going after the pharmacies that I knew would report me. I just sent medication to the pharmacy where I knew my patient could get them. So I never was in trouble with my boards. I even, I was president of 2 traditional medical organizations during COVID, because I always spoke from this point of fact, something that I knew was true and something that you could never impeach me on. And, you know, some other people were maybe more brave than I have been, I don't know. But I always fought from a different angle because I always understood if you truly want to stay a physician in the United States, at least, you can talk about creating this parallel medical system, but you cannot. You know, everyone talks about it. I hear it every day. And everyone's like, oh, we're going to do this and this and that. And you know, more power to them. Great, wonderful. How many of your doctors actually had to exit the GMC and now are not practicing medicine in the full extent that they were supposed to practice it? You know, instead of keep on saying, let's create this new life on Mars type of a thing, why don't we learn to live within the system? And, you know, and I practice kind of like that. I keep one foot in the system, but one foot completely out. I would say probably 95% of my body is outside of the system, because I truly feel that my mission, for lack of the better word, sorry, when I'm a little bit emotionally charged, I forget my English words, but my mission in life from the physician standpoint is to be able to take care of my patients. Well, I cannot take care of them if I completely abandon the system and turn my back onto it. And I'm not saying that this is the answer for everyone, but I think we need to more physicians to try to kind of color within the line somewhat so that we can keep our licenses so that we can truly help our patients. And I think even in that video, that's kind of her moment when the interviewer said to her, oh, let's create this parallel system that everyone dreams of. Well, we live within rules and laws of our countries and our, certifying bodies. If we keep on trying to challenge our certifying bodies and lose our license, we might feel great that we were shouting from the mountaintop, but then we left our patients behind. And I think she has understood the enormity of that task because it's a balancing beam. If you tip one too much, you're going to lose something on the other one. And that's kind of what I took from that conversation.
You know, when we think and reflect on that, Christian, and I struggle to try and explain this when I'm speaking to the general public, you know, it is such a big thing for a doctor to not be able to practice their craft, because it's not just about a profession. It's about that privilege of interacting in a way with patients and families that you can't get in almost any other profession. So there is something that is very important about that ability. When doctors therefore look at these situations, because people think this is just about COVID, no. What it means is that beyond the COVID, no matter what is happening, this is teaching doctors to not rock the boat, to stay silent. How does that get balanced from a psychological point of view?
I think it's really hard because we've seen many people speak out and bad things happen to them, whether they're reported to their boards, whether they get struck off. Usually it's the process that's more difficult. That's the punishment, is going through the process. And you know, it costs so much money to defend yourself. Often if you are threatened with a GMC, going to the GMC, you have to instruct legal. It's going to cost money, and it's not just, sometimes it's the employers who get involved. So it might be whoever's employing you as a doctor, they might threaten that you need to leave unless, and if you don't, we will then report you to the GMC. So I think it constrains a lot of people, and it becomes quite a conflict, and it does create a bit of this cognitive dissonance within doctors in terms of maybe I shouldn't speak out, maybe I didn't see it, and they can sometimes turn a blind eye without really realizing fully what they're turning a blind eye to. They'll put up with more, think maybe I got it wrong, there's too many people speaking out, maybe it's me that's wrong. There's been many times when I've spoken out on things that I've had to question myself when people have come after me or said some things that have sort of really upset me. I've had to question myself and go, have I got this really wrong? And I think sometimes the threat of punishment makes you really start to doubt yourself. But I think what's happening at the moment is there are a lot of doctors who will not, and it's not just the medical profession, this is probably much wider, that know something is wrong, see what happens to someone else, it sends a message and says, I'm not going to speak out, I will just keep my head down. And that's the bit I really feel when it comes to medicine is really, really dangerous, because there are a lot of the public who no longer trust the medical profession. There are a lot of people who say, I don't want to go to the NHS. I do not want to be seen. And I think with very, very good reason. When you look at what happened in the UK, where you close down a healthcare system, stay home, save the NHS, and then you have Chris Whitty and Boris Johnson saying, well, I don't think lockdowns actually did anything, and maybe a big mistake was not telling the public that the NHS was open. Trust has been lost, and that is a really difficult thing. So when you're now going back to sort of talking about how the doctors sort of feel in this system, it's very hard. It's very hard if you've spoken out. If you haven't spoken out, it's making it very, very complicated. But I can understand why people are very, very skeptical of trusting doctors, and I worry that the patient, as I keep going back to, the doctor-patient relationship is so important, and that got really impacted, and medical ethics just went out the window a lot of the time. So I think it's, when you speak out, you find yourself not sleeping. You find yourself looking over your shoulder. You worry, especially at the start. You worry what's going to come around the corner. Is someone going to come after me? And it is so difficult. So you have a real pull between, do I whistleblow? Do I not? What is the right thing to do? And I think there has to be more protection for whistleblowers. It's something that I feel is just so important. I don't feel whistleblowers are protected enough at all. And I don't know what it's like in the States, but I really feel that here.
Yeah, these are very, very tough times. And as we tie this together now, I want us to focus back a bit on Jackie and her life and what she had sacrificed in order for so many lives to be saved. Because we have to remember that her work influenced clinicians across the world, and that work then influenced them to make difference to their patients' lives. It always starts from somewhere, and it's important to remember that those minds that were able to create and were able to see beyond what was in front of them, instead of being targeted, should have been protected and exalted. This is now a world where those people who follow the narratives are oftentimes the most successful. And patients, I think the whole public needs to reflect carefully on that, if that is what they actually want. So, as we're coming to tie this together, Kat, I want you to say some more about Jackie. If you were speaking to her before was there anything that could be said that would impact other people? That's the important point, that would make them not have that loss of hope.
With Jackie, she was a leader, and she was definitely someone for all of us to look up to. And like you said, she had a lot of struggles. She was the one, the government went after her. I remember even during the trial, there was a point where she didn't know if she's going to be imprisoned. But she very much stayed strong in her faith that she was going to win, that the truth is going to come out, and it has. And, it is difficult to speak out, but as physicians, it is our duty to protect our patients. And if we are too scared to do that, then we really need to rethink why we went into this profession. And I can tell you that there was never doubt in her mind that she was going to say something, never. And What I've learned, I think, from this past few days, and I'm sure there's going to be so much more, is, Christian and I are very good friends, but we have not spoken Christian in several months because our lives got too busy. We used to send each other text messages all the time and just check on each other. We haven't done it in a few months. And I think it's important to keep on this, and we need to all take accountability to kind of check on each other. Even if it's like, hey, what have you done lately? What is the movie you saw? Did you read a new book? Just to know that, for the other person to know that there's someone on the other end that will answer. I think we take for granted sometimes the need that we all have. And last 4 years haven't been easy at all for many of us. And I think we just kind of, you wake up every morning, you do your thing, you do your job, you take care of your family, you wash the dishes, you do the laundry, and you start over and over and over again, that sometimes you forget. And then there is that moment in time that it hits you. And I think what happened is she was most likely on this high. And I know a couple of things happened, actually, most likely, that influenced some of the thinking that she had. And I'm not going to share any of that. That's private and whatever. But I do think that we need to make sure that we just continue being a source of strength for each other, because we underestimate the weight of these last 4 years. And I can tell you that the past few days I thought about it, and the weight is enormous. Most of us just stay so busy not to think about it. And I think after the conference and everything else, she was not busy anymore not to think about it. And it might have gotten to her. I do wish that she sent me a message, and that we could have spoken about our kids and silly things. And maybe I would have heard her cries, but I didn't. So that's kind of where we are.
Thank you so much, Kat. Thank you so much. And Christian, I'll just ask you, if you imagine that you were talking to someone who is struggling at the moment, what would you say to them now as we try and go forward?
I think it's also important to point out that we forget who looks after the people who are looking after us. We take for granted that doctors are they're not really human. They're kind of, we sometimes don't feel they've got the same emotions and are going to feel the same way. And I think it's, especially some of the real warriors in the last 4 years who have really been on the front line, developing protocols, going out there, getting attacked. We just make an assumption wrongly that they're like Superwoman and Superman, and we forget that they're just like us and they've got exactly the same emotions. And I think, Kat, you remind me there that we do need to look after each other. I've been speaking out on a few different topics for a number of years, and you don't gain anything from speaking out, except in terms of financially and things like that. People often accuse you of that. What you normally get is demonization, bullying, censorship, and it really takes its toll. And when you're saying about what people have lost, most of us have lost a lot. And I think we need to sort of now start to, this is a bit of a wake-up call for me, that to check in on myself, where am I, and in everyone else that I've kind of interacted with and been in, because I think there's a lot of people that I know that are going through a really difficult time, whether that's in general, but also the people who have spoken out. There is something quite shameful, it feels at times, when you've had your license taken away from you, you've lost your identity, or you've got that at risk. If someone's going through a GMC tribunal, they've got the risk of not being able to practice something that is so important to them. What are they going to do then? Who are they? There's something very symbolic about the job that you do. And when you have that taken away from you, it's not just your identity. It can feel a huge sense of shame and guilt and embarrassment. So there is so much attached to these things. Even just an accusation, even a complaint can make you feel that way. And a complaint can be enough to send someone over the edge. It really, really can. So I just feel that we need to check in on, we do need to be checking in on everyone, and and pulling on the resources we need to, because Kat, would you have picked up on something that said, maybe, who knows? It's very, very, very hard to know.
Yeah. So, thank you both for being here. And as the final memory of this, I think that video was so touching that to close us out, I'm going to play that again, the 5 minutes of it. If you're listening, it's worth watching to the end and just reflecting on her life and what she has sacrificed for so many others. Thank you very much, Kat. Thank you very much, Christian. Thank you very much to everybody who has been with us. Let us take a moment and remember her at this time.
In terms of what happened in Zimbabwe, the person who reported me worked for the Wellcome Trust and was a British doctor or a professor here, employed by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. There were a lot of letters written at the time saying that it was people outside of Zimbabwe that were targeting me. And in fact, our government protected me in terms of not ending up in jail. So I would say that wherever this is being driven from is above governments. It's people who fund governments. And I think that the doctors, many of them were actually completely captured. I think that doctors thought that they were doing the right thing. The doctor-patient relationship was used to get the public to trust that these things were safe and that they worked. So, and it was a massive machine. I think the people that I'm most concerned about are the media. Nothing gets out. Even this summit was highly censored. So I think that certain names are highly censored. I think that certain words are picked up by AI and censored. And I think the vast majority of the public have no access to this information at all.
Is there anything, and just have a moment to think and scroll around your head, is there anything you want to say that I haven't asked you that you think is important to say on the record that we can have for all time?
Not really, actually, I don't think. Like I said, I'm in an odd place at the moment. When Martin and I spoke about this, it was before he lost his court case in Namibia, and they said he didn't have locus standi. And that's what they've done, really. They've erased us. And it's been so easy. And that, for me, is the most frightening thing. And the recent amendments to the Medical Act say that the medical registrar can erase a doctor from the register. So you can put in decades of training and have decades of knowledge and experience. And if you say or do the wrong thing, you're gone.
I mean, I don't know if you want to speak into maybe a solution being another way of finding our own regulatory bodies or the sort of bit of the brainstorm stuff from yesterday. If, like what Shankar says, we need to just leave them behind and find a new way. Do we want to talk about that, or do we not want to? Because that might...
The only reason I can't put my heart and soul into it, because I don't think it'll work.
This stuff, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What we're up against is too powerful. And I'm such a solution-based person. I'll sit and think about solutions until I go purple. And I've been left at the end of this summit, to be honest, with the feeling of it's been wonderful to connect with people that I only connected with on Zoom before. But it's also the reality that we're living in some very difficult to explain times. And I don't know what to do about it. I actually don't. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know where I'll be in 5 years' time. I was thinking that last night. I really don't know what is going to happen. I think a lot of doctors are going to be replaced by AI because they follow algorithms. I think a lot of patients have lost trust in the medical profession and are looking for alternatives. But it just seems to be a lot of chaos out there. We worked out that if you used silver, ivermectin, doxycycline, and zinc, you would probably get a response. And the day we added ivermectin to our patients was the day that people really stopped dying.